With the Planet Fitness Black Card, you don't just get a great workout, you get a great perk out because your membership is packed with perks. Join for just $1 down and $24.99 a month.
Join the judgment-free zone today. Deal ends Thursday, August 10th.
See Home Club for details.
Welcome back, spectators. We've got the mics and you've got the hear holes that keep coming back for more. I'm Jake, your synopsis butchering host, along with your real hero of the story co-host, Jesus. Jesus, are you ready for the most savage episode yet?
Yeah, quick correction though. The last action hero of the story, me. And yes, this is a savage episode. None other than the savage Erik Larsen, and boy, was he savage on the show today.
Oh my God, I just still can't. For all you first-time listeners out there, we really appreciate you trying a bite of this juicy audio apple. Spec Tales is a comic book podcast where we ask collectors and creators, what's your Grail tale? Every week, we discuss stories about collecting comic grails, how they were obtained, and how they inspired new creativity.
We also like to break down some comic book market speculation and how, as collectors, we can help the hobby pay for itself.
Jesus, you know what we need to do now?
Oh, I know what we need to do right now.
We talking about practice?
No, man, we ain't talking about practice. We're talking about the Scarce Army roll call.
Roll call! That's right. This week, we get to welcome our good friend and phenomenal podcaster, Cookie, from Just a Little Podcast to the Scarce Army. Cookie was an OG spectator and our guest on episode 10. Go check that episode out and also check out his entertainment news and updates show, Just a Little Podcast. Cookie, thanks, dude.
Yeah, man. Thank you, Cookie. We really appreciate it, man. And for being an OG spectator, we really appreciate you. Thank you. And also, if you want to get yourself on our Scarce Army roll call and exclusive access to our new monthly podcast series, Floppies, head over to our Patreon page and subscribe to our show for $3.99 a month. All the money goes right back into the show and helps us expand what we're doing here on Spec Tales.
You can find a link to our Patreon page in the show notes. Jesus, I'm stupid excited about this week's episode. We were joined by Savage Dragon creator himself, Erik Larsen, and he was just so much fun to talk to. But honestly, some of the stuff that he said, my jaw is still on the floor.
Yeah, man. I think, whenever we're getting to talk to these really cool creators that we grew up with and that have written or drawn some of our favorite stuff, you have this expectation. But man, he just surpassed the expectation, man. What a cool conversation we had.
Just incredible. So, what are we waiting for? Let's light this fuse. So count your fins like you count your blessings and avoid all cover art drawn by preschoolers. This is episode 39.
This is a conspiracy. That's what this is.
Just begging to course its way through your veins.
Let's just for a moment speculate, shall we?
You're into comic books, aren't you?
I'm a nerd.
But you do like comic books.
Comic books aren't just for sad nerds anymore.
Do you think we need one more?
Strange things are afoot at the Circle K.
Do you think we need one more?
Objection, calls for speculation, move to strike.
This is a bad idea. This is a bad idea.
All right, we'll get one more.
Spectacles, a comic book podcast with Jake and Jesus.
Once again, welcome back, spectators, and thank you for tuning in for the latest episode of Spec Tales. This week, we are joined by the CFO of Image Comics, the man responsible for Savage Dragon, Venom's Drooling Tongue, and the reason Jesus and I aspired to be nerds when we grew up. Of course, we are talking about Mr. Erik Larsen. Erik, thank you for joining the show.
Hey, it's really great to be here.
Thank you for joining, Erik. We really appreciate you. We're really excited. I don't know if you can tell, but we're really excited to get this thing going.
He's making fun of my radio voice thing that I try to do when I start off, which is good because
it's great. Right? I love it.
I didn't know we were all doing radio voices.
Oh, no, it's just me. I always try to do something, but well, so people seem to like it, I think. I don't know. So Erik, while trying to think of an opening question, Jesus and I kind of realized that we could probably geek out and ask you about 100,000 different questions, about your ridiculously cool career in comics thus far. So instead, I guess we wanted to get a little meta with it and ask the first question. So with all that you've done in your career so far, what do you get asked about the most these days?
Well, it depends on if it's in person. It's is that how you hold your pencil? that seems to be the one I'm asked the most.
Really? Oh, can you? I know that this is an audio medium, but can you show us? What do you do?
Oh, it's what do I even have that I could be pretending to draw on here? Yeah, I hold it like
oh, that is unique.
So it's kind of like you who's never held a pencil before holding a pencil.
It almost looks like you're carving.
Yeah, it's like what are you doing over there? Is that how you draw? It's like, yeah, that's not only how I draw, but it's also how I hold a fork.
Yeah,
we're going to do that.
Yeah, you're just cutting up your steak with that, like it. And that's how you write your name. Everything goes.
All inking tools are completely different when they're in my hand. It's like we don't know how to function like that. Why are you holding it at this angle?
Somebody could teach a class on the Erik Larsen style of calligraphy.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, mostly people will be like, hey, do you miss doing Spider-Man? Or hey, who's your favorite character? Or what do you like drawing the most? Different stuff like that. It's all pretty basic stuff.
I thought it would for sure be Savage Dragon, simply because it's the biggest thing you've been on for so long.
Yeah, that's the one I like drawing the most.
Well, of course.
By a little bit.
I got this one down, yeah.
Yeah, well, of course. You could probably do that in your sleep. Probably have.
I thought it would be. I thought it would be more about image, and starting image and making that jump. And I guess now
I get a lot of that from people who are interviewing me. Will be like, "Well, so how did this whole thing started?" and stuff like that. Usually, there's a bunch of history stuff of where'd you guys come from and what's this all about? And where did you grow up and where were you born and all that kind of nonsense.
And you refer them to Wikipedia? Is that?
Yeah, it's like all that information is out there, and I've done like 1,000 podcasts. It's like you could watch every one of those and get the same information if you like, or I could repeat it here in a I mean, every time you tell it, it gets like a little more distorted, and pretty soon it's like, that's complete bullshit. What the hell?
I'm glad you feel that way, Erik, because that was our plan. Was we just want you to retell the story of Image from beginning to end for this episode. No, I'm not serious about that. Well, for all you listeners out there who are first-time listeners, we'll go over real quick what we do for this show. We have 3 basic segments. We do a recent pickup segment where we'll talk about something recent that we either picked up and read, something we collected recently, anything comic related. Then we go into a Grail Tale segment where we will ask Erik here to tell us about a comic book grail of his, how he obtained it, and maybe what it means to him or why it's important. I know he's really excited about that. I can see it on his face. And we finish the episode with speculation. All of our all of our listeners are comic collectors, and a lot of them like to go out and help the hobby pay for itself. So they'll speculate on something. They'll buy a book and maybe they'll get a couple extra, and then they will resell it. And so that's where we always end our show, with something maybe to be on the lookout for. Sound good to everybody here?
No.
Shut up, Jesus. All right, let's move into the first segment.
Recent pickups.
That's right, the recent pickups segment. Let's get this thing kicked off. Hey, Zeus, you're up first.
I think Erik liked that.
It's so FM radio,
If you can't tell, that's the style.
Yeah. All right. So for my recent pickup, it's a new comic book day book. It's also from an independent publisher, Vault Comics. This is, I don't know, been big. It's friend of the show. Tim Seeley was on our show, episode 37. Yep. This is West of Sundown.
Oh, man. I did pick one up. I haven't read it yet. I'm looking forward to reading this book, though.
So this is by Seeley and Campbell, Terry Farrell, and the last one is lettered by Crank. This is a vampire western, really cool artwork in it. I really like it. It has an interesting concept. You guys know I love vampires. And it's a pretty interesting concept. So I added it to my pull list. Very excited about it. I already read it. I'm going to go ahead and ruin it for Jake here on page 3.
I haven't read it. No spoiling.
On page 3, Jake, she dies. That's all I got to say.
Oh, you ruined it for Eric, really. I'm not even worried about myself. I'm worried about you ruining it for Eric.
I'm not buying it now.
You're an asshole.
What a dick.
Sorry, it had to be. Yeah, I'm sorry, I had to get it ruined for you, Eric. But I was just going after Jake. But you're just collateral damage at this point. So but no, it's a great book. I recommend it for you guys to pick it up if you guys like vampires and westerns and vampire westerns.
Okay, I'm glad you distinguished between the two.
Very small subgenre.
That's it. Yeah, it's a little Venn diagram. So if it's like,
I will be picking that up, of course. Eric, what anything recent you've picked up lately? We're gonna put you on the spot here.
Recently, I got a page of original art from Fantastic Four number 63 by Jack Kirby and Joe Sinnott.
Oh,
okay. Pulling out the big guns.
Super awesome.
Wow, he brought the big guns to the front of the show.
I'm pretty happy about that.
Wow.
It's an early issue, so it's a twice up page. They used to be drawn pretty big, like 12 and a half by 18 and a half. So it's a sizable page, and it has the thing on it. And everybody loves the thing. If you're getting an FF page, you got to get one with the thing on it. So
I mean, I would, of course.
Page.
I mean, did anybody draw the thing better than Kirby?
No, nobody did.
So I have a question about page art and collecting it. So and I guess me and Jake were discussing a little bit this before, but there is some that are more coveted, I guess, when they have the full body of the character on there, or certain characters on there. Is that something that versus half bodies or just a face or something?
It really depends on the artist, the significance of the page. It's so variable. There's no easy way of saying, oh, and all pages that have 3 panels are worth this much. It's so variable because every single page from every single book is a one-of-a-kind item. So if things are going up on auction, it just depends, how many people really want it and are battling over it. And it can go crazy if 2 people happen to be super into it. And you can get it for next to nothing if they're not fighting over it. And it really depends so much from where you're buying it to who you're buying it from. It's so all over the place. It's kind of hard to put numbers on a lot of this stuff, and a lot of people have trouble pricing things. It's like, well, how much is this worth? I don't even know how to judge how much this is worth.
Well, it's one of a kind. Or
it's all one of a kind. It's like, if I'm selling a page from anything, it's like, who the hell knows?
The last quick question on that, because I am trying to dabble into it. Do they all, or at least the older ones, all have the signature of the artist or the writer on it?
No, they don't all. So it varies a lot in terms of that. And depending on who the artist is, there can be no signatures on it at all. So it's like,
ones with signatures might be worth more, maybe.
If people want it, yes. Sometimes people are like, "Oh, I don't like it. It says to Lance on it." I'm not Lance. It's been personalized. For some people, that's like, I don't like that. But if you want a page from Jack Kirby and you want that page and it says to Lance on it, shut up. This is what you get. It's this or nothing. What do you want? If that's the page, there's one page.
So I know that we've been talking a little bit earlier, but I know you were a fan of original comic art, also a fan of comics. And is there one you get more of a high from collecting, like that moment of getting it? Is it, do you prefer the artwork over the books?
Yeah. I think so. I think the art would be definitely more than the comics, but the art is also worth usually considerably more than the comics too. So
I could see that.
I'm mostly not out there buying super high-end old comic books. There is some that I definitely but, here's what the wife doesn't know about.
You too, huh?
Well, the thing is, I would go to conventions and do like commissions and sketches and sell original art and stuff like that. And then I would have all this cash, and I'd be like, I'm just going to the dealer's room and buying all these comics in cash. And then come home, it's like, how'd the convention go? Oh, it was terrible. I only made $600. Meanwhile, I got this big old portfolio full of awesome stuff under my arm.
That's the way to do it. That's the way to do it.
So it's like, that worked out all right.
Oh,
that's pretty cool.
That's awesome. Nice. Well, I'm going to jump into, I'm actually very excited to talk about my recent pickup. I read the first 3 issues of Ant, of the latest series. And I mean, there's a lot to cover with this, but Erik, you are the writer and the artist for these issues, and issue number 4 is coming out in May 4th, correct?
It'll probably be late. No, me. I just been dragging my ass lately, but
I've already got it pre-ordered, so I guess it'll show up when it does for me. But
it'll be a week or so late, I think.
All right, cool. Well, you heard it here first, folks.
Get all these things going. It's not easy.
Well, so do you mind if we go into a little bit of Ant and the history of the project and all of that?
Sure.
So I mean, it was originally created by Mario Gully and published in 2004. And I have a habit of butchering synopsises on this show, so I wrote something down earlier, so I didn't embarrass myself in front of you, Erik. But the original series started about a tormented young 8-year-old Hannah Washington who would write in her diary about an alter ego superhero, Ant. Now that was in the original series and subsequent issues. But what you've done with the character in the new version is you do start out with her being 8 years old or very young, but you age her up very quickly. From there,
there was another Ant series
in between,
2 actual other Ant series.
Since
the first one came from a company called Arcana or something like that, and at the end of that series, she was somewhat older.
Okay,
and she it ended with her breaking out of an insane asylum. And we don't know what happened to her. When she next appeared, he was being published through Image Comics, and it kind of picks up things from that point. So she's already a young adult, but she's also apparently had all kinds of adventures that we don't know about. And it's kind of the problem with the second series is it's kind of surreal in a lot of ways. It's mostly because it seemed that Mario and a number of different writers that he worked with didn't fully work it out ahead of time, and were just kind of making it up as he went along. And also because he wanted the character to be immersed in Image Comics and to have always been there. So it just became this something of a mess. And he would do a story where he'd be and I'm really I was really Spawn's babysitter, and I babysat Cyan when she was a little kid. It's like, oh, all right. And I used to have a bunch of adventures with Spawn, but you never read them, and nobody's ever seen them. But trust me, those happen.
So just riding his way into history a little bit.
Yeah, it was kind of weird the way he had approached it, and then there would be other stories where, like in issue 4, she suddenly comes out of a dreamlike state and was like, "Oh, the previous 4 issues, those didn't even happen. That was all hallucination." It was like, holy crap! That's like the first 4 issues of your new book, and you're immediately saying none of that stuff happened. That just seems like a bad move all around. And there kept being weird little situations like that, and new writers would come on and they would kind of put a lie to stuff that had come before. It's just kind of chaos. So my idea here in this 3rd series is to look through everything that's come before, put it all in chronological order, and then try as my best to make sense of it all. And that's where I'm going with it.
Well, I'm
not trying to say all of this stuff that came before didn't happen. In fact, there's a lot of visual touchstones and callbacks from stuff that's happened in other comics. So it'll be like, oh, here she is incarcerated and in a straitjacket, just like she was in the Arcana miniseries number 4. And here she is going to a comic book convention, just like she was in the first issue of Ant from Image Comics back in 2005. So there's little things that I'm kind of going, okay, this happened, and this part over here happened, but this part over here, remember before where we said all this flashback stuff was nonsense? Well, I'm reaffirming that it's nonsense, and I'm not showing you any of the nonsense. I'm showing you what actually happened. And then she thinks about, hey, I remember all this craziness, but you're not seeing it. So,
well,
it actually is more coherent than all that. But.
I read the first 3 issues and I enjoyed it. There was a slight, almost Fever Dream-esque style or feeling to it a little bit. Because
I kind of like that. I kind of wanted to go, if this character is a little bit unsure of what's going on in the world, I want the reader to kind of be like, wait, is this happening or is this not happening?
It just slightly off kilter, and in a great way. Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. But the something, maybe I enjoyed it a little bit more totally meant as a compliment. The ending of each one of those, I looked forward to getting to Anthill, the letters page. And then going into, you showed actually at the end of every issue, there was a lot of comparison frame by frames where you're like, all right, well, this was the original frame. This is what that looked like. And then this is from the new series. And you did a lot of comparisons. And I actually felt like I had gotten really into some of the older stuff as well. And if you want to hear the full story about how Ant came to be, I mean, it's covered in the letter, Anthill, in the first issue.
Over pretty thoroughly.
Yeah. Well, exactly. It's very interesting to me. I guess I've got 2 questions effectively for you regarding the series. And the first one is, so, when you've been a part of this series or a part of what the series was doing since 2004 or since early on with the series.
Yeah, pretty early on, because I was bouncing a lot of ideas past Mario, and we had talked about it fairly extensively. So when he got to a point where he was no longer actively producing Ant comics and was wanting to move on and do other stuff, he had got to a point where he wanted to sell the character, and he had an offer from somebody else, and he contacted me and said, well, I've got this offer, but if you want to buy it, I'll sell it to you instead. I'm like, all right. And it wasn't something I had ever considered. I never bought anybody's character before. So it was just, all right, this seems like an odd thing to be doing. I make up characters all the time. I don't really need to buy anybody else's characters, but I liked the character a lot. I liked the visual of it a lot. And I had put a lot of thought into the character and a lot of thought into the book. So it seemed like I had already done a bunch of the groundwork here. So
made sense.
Why not be the guy who's doing it rather than the guy who's sitting there going, "Oh, why is he doing it? And why is this so terrible?"
Well, why? So while I mean, the stages you went through in your career, along with where Ant was as it was growing and getting to the point where you were buying it, like the parallels, of you going from being the publisher at Image. And then now, I don't know, were you ever an editor on this series, on the previous?
Not in an official capacity.
Okay.
But I was never, the only stuff I've really been an editor on in an official capacity have been characters that I created.
Okay.
So when there was a Freak Force miniseries or Super Patriot or stuff like that, if I wasn't actively writing it myself, I would be there as an editor to go, yeah, don't do that, or change that, or fix that. Or,
just an unofficial one.
I'm going to fix that.
So I guess, how would you say your relationship with Ant, with the character, has grown over the last almost 20 years now?
We get along.
Well, that's good.
I don't even know how to answer that, really.
I guess so. What you're doing with the book, it accumulated over the years, right? Like what your thought process. It's not necessarily like he offered you the character and then you thought of what you wanted to do with it.
Yeah, there was a certain amount of it wasn't totally nailed down. It wasn't like when he was doing the book himself that I was sitting there going, no, I've got this way better idea. You should do this instead. There were sort of parameters and things that I thought, oh, you should be doing. If I was doing the book, it'd be more of a superhero book. It wouldn't be as chaotic as you got it, or wouldn't be as. He had a tendency to kind of pander a little bit more than I do. It's kind of real cheesecakey.
Okay.
And my tendency is to go, you know what? I'm going to draw a well-proportioned female character, and she's going to look attractive because she's attractive, but she's still going to be kicking somebody's ass. She's not going to be sitting there just posing and provocatively for the sake of posing provocatively. It's like, no, every pose that she's in serves a purpose. It's functional in terms of how the character moves and what the character's doing. So it's more action oriented than it was. She has spent a lot of time crawling up buildings and down buildings and posing on things than she did actually having adventures before.
Fights. Well, I am looking forward to issue 4 with Savage Dragon, whenever that does come out. So I'll be reading it.
It's just a nightmare, kids.
I do have one question on Ant, and you mentioned, the anthill. There's a bunch, the whole history of it. But there was one question that came up, at least for me, because I'm always in the weeds and in the details of stuff, and I always love the history of it. But like you mentioned on there in passing, that there's a couple issues that you weren't able to purchase as part of the purchase, right? And so I was just curious if that's something you can talk about, of why, like, it was tied up in another purchase or is tied up with another publisher. How does that work if that's the character's a part of the character?
When you work with somebody, and you have an arrangement with them that they are the co-creator, then they own part of, they just have their claws in something the same as you do. So they've got some participation in that, just as the other party does. So in that particular case, that writer had done certain scenes in the book which are like, okay, well, this came from this writer. He came up with this idea. So I don't necessarily own that idea. And he came up with some, at least one character that was used a lot in those last 3 issues, that it's like, okay, well, that's a character that's co-owned by this writer and Mario. So I can't use that character, and I don't have rights to these 3 issues of the book. So,
but you have like half rights in, right? Like you can
in theory, I've got some rights there somewhere.
Okay.
But I kind of, because this series is so choppy, and because there were 4 or 5 different writers that were all pushing and pulling in different directions, I kind of feel like it's best just to wash my hands of it and try and make the most of what I've got and carry on, rather than go, and here's a reprint of the previous 12 issues. And does this make any sense to anybody? Doesn't to me. Here you go. Enjoy. There's also the first 4 issues from Arcana. I guess the original publisher to that stuff has some rights to reprint that, I think. So it's another thing of, okay, well, then there's these 4 issues that I don't really own. It's really it's kind of a mess. I don't really know what my specific rights are to that, but I'm swiping from it like crazy. So, well, I'm trying to say as much of it happened as I can say. That makes, I just want to kind of validate the material that came before and say, no, this actually happened, and I want to address and acknowledge that this was part of her past. But at the same time, I'm going to give it kind of, I'm going to cover it very, very briefly, because that material is also out there in some form. So if I'm flashing back on something, I might just go, okay, well, here's this whole sequence that in these other comics took 3 issues. I'm going to cover that body of material in 4 pages and just give you the highlights reel on what happened there. It's like, okay, she went to the comic book convention, saw the guy. That guy was attacked. She fought back. Then we come out of that scene, and it's like, oh, okay, that was pretty much bam, bam, bam. You fire right through that in pretty short order, and it's like, I could have made that. You could have made that a 12-page fight scene if I want to. That's all kind of fun, But it's like, do you really want to be just regurgitating a lot of the same old material again? It's like, maybe not.
Yeah.
So like right now, the next few issues kind of tie in with older issues of Spawn and Savage Dragon, and kind of cover some of the same events from her point of view. And so there's going to be times there where you'll go, oh, well, that page looks just like this page that was in Spawn, or that page looks pretty similar to something that went on in Savage Dragon. But I'm not going to do, here's every single panel from these things and every single little event that went on and all that stuff, because it would just be like, it's too much of the same stuff, and she's got to move on with her life and get to the next bunch of stuff. So,
well, and her perspective would be different than theirs.
Yeah, and I that's kind of the whole idea of all this is, if you asked any of the fellow image creators, give us the cliff notes after any image meeting, you'd get like completely different story than somebody else. Like Todd will sometimes go and tell the story of the time we were all playing baseball up in Portland, right? He'll go, oh, let me tell you, and then Erik came up and he hit one off the, it's like, Todd, I was actually getting married that weekend. I wasn't there at all. So I'm going to go with your perception of what I did when I came up with that's wrong. I'm going with that's wrong. I was busy. I was, but you go with any event that people are part of when there's several people there. You listen back and you go, even if there was a recording, you would listen back and you go, who is that talking and why are they such an idiot? It's like, oh, it's me. Why am I saying that? The words coming out of my mouth that I disagree with. That doesn't even make sense that I would say that. What was I thinking? Plus, people are quick to be like, I'm looking for the crack in that, and I'm going to pounce on it and disagree with you vehemently. It's like, all right, I guess that's one way of approaching a conversation. But I look for some context. I don't know.
Well, as I had said, I really am genuinely looking forward to where the character goes, and it's a fun read. It's a fun read.
Well, thanks a lot.
But that said, it is time for us to move into our next segment, which is our favorite. Eric's waiting for the drop to happen. Here we go.
Grail Tale. Grail Tale. Grail Tale. Grail Tale. Grail Tale.
The Grail Tale segment, which is our favorite one because we always like to learn a little bit more about the individuals we're talking to. And we kind of feel like when you're learning about a collector, the best way to learn is to learn about what they value most, or personally. So, Erik, what do you got for us today?
All right, I've got two. So I'm going to go two. One is a comic book, and one is artwork.
Okay.
Because I got to cover
both
ends of my collecting mania here. So, my dad read comic books when he was a kid. So I grew up with his comic book collection when I was a little kid, and eventually, I grew up in adulthood and I became a comic book guy myself and all that other nonsense. And then in 1991, my house burned down, and all the comics that he bought when he was a kid, they were all destroyed. As were all my comics. Everything was gone. So I've rebought a bunch of comics that he had, and I had a bunch of comics that I had, but the one comic that he didn't have, which was always something that I always wanted, was the first appearance of Captain Marvel in Whiz Comics #2.
Ooh.
So that was something of a Grail book for me. And that's the one where it's all convention cash. Here you go. Here's the weight of a puppy. Can I have that piece of paper over there?
Expensive paper that's deteriorating over there.
So that was one. And then the first comic I ever read that was with my own money that I remember was Incredible Hulk 156. And that was Hulk versus Hulk at the heart of the atom, and great issue. Archie Goodwin writer, Herb Trimpe was the penciler, Sal Trapani was the inker. It's like everything I want. Artie Simek lettered it. It's like everything I could want in a comic book. And I bought the original art to the entire issue.
Wow.
So, plus the cover, which was a more recent acquisition, but it's like, here's all 20 interior pages and the cover of the first comic you ever bought. So it's like,
how long did it take you to accumulate that?
Well, somebody had the original art to the entire issue minus the cover. So it was really one of those situations where you're walking around the San Diego con, and I came back to some dealer who I kind of dealt with back and forth, and he had the entire thing. And I looked over and I saw it, and I was like, yeah, I don't care how much that costs. That needs to belong to me.
That's mine. You just don't know it yet.
It's just there's no way I can walk out of here without owning that. So this needs to happen. I don't even remember how much it costs, but.
And then you got the cover later. It took you a few years to track that down?
Yeah, I got the cover later. The cover came up in one of those auctions, and there was another. Don't let the wife know about this situation where.
I just can't believe you're Erik Larsen and you're still saying don't let the wife find out.
Like, you know, I love her so much. You could have bought a house, or how about this?
It's good to know that every collector has the same issue with the wife.
Yeah, it's all the same thing. It's not like
it doesn't matter if you're who you are. It
doesn't matter who you are. There's always something. So that was a situation where Robert Kirkman had been buying a bunch of my Savage Dragon original art because he's a big fan of all the early Image Comics stuff. Mm-hmm. So I was like, hey, Robert, I really want this cover. You buy it, and however much you spend on it, I will pay you the equivalent amount in original art of Sword Savage Dragon. So he ended up getting a lot of art. Let me just put it out.
You got a lot of artwork for that.
That's actually pretty interesting you mentioned that, because I did want to ask you, because you made mention before of trading services, like a cover for a cover, right? I think you said you do a cover for somebody and then they'll do a cover for you. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that isn't talked about as much now as it is with, you know, like yourself and other, I guess, earlier creators. And is that something that you guys were either like taught, or you just saw it happening, you're like, oh, let's just do it? Or it's also because it's something that allows you to get some certain covers by trading some artwork and stuff of that nature?
I'm not sure where that came up. I don't even know when it happened first, but I know recently it's like people contact me and say, hey, I want you to do a cover for whatever. I just did one for Astro City not too long ago that just came out.
I saw that.
And then there's one for Philadelphia that just came out. So
I saw that too. That's
all right. I did a cover for Philadelphia. Now you got to do a cover for me. It's like, all right, well, let's see how that works. And some of them work out all right, and some of them I still haven't pestered anybody about, but I'll build up to that. Like I did one for Crossover, and it's like, oh, well, the guy I was dealing with was the writer. I guess I should. I don't want him to draw a cover. That doesn't seem like a good deal at all. So I guess I should be like, yeah, get somebody to do a cover for me.
Well, hold on. Was it Cates, the writer? Of
yeah.
Well, he just did a cover for Todd McFarlane.
He did, and Todd redrew the shit out of it. Yeah. No, I saw what he gave him, and it was like, yeah. I mean, I don't want to make fun of anybody, but it looked like a child drew that. It's like, it's not professional caliber. Why ain't you stretching that?
Oh man!
So you're not doing a cover for cover with Cates?
I don't know what I'm going to do with that. At some point, I'll get a favor from him. I don't even know, but I'm kind of fast and loose with a lot of this stuff. Whatever, people help you out, and you help people out. And,
would you say that's a
it all comes from?
Is that consistent across the board with the industry, or is that something that you find more prevalent within certain groups, like within like Image or anything like that?
I don't know. I'm only one guy, so I've got only my own experiences to deal with.
Oh, those are enough.
So it's like, people ask me, well, who are the good people in the industry and who are the assholes? And it's like, everybody in the industry is super nice to me. So as far as I'm concerned, they're all awesome, But it's like, I know that other people have horror stories to tell about all kinds of folks. People will take me aside and be like, oh my God, that guy was lying to me like crazy. Or he totally ripped me off. I'm like, oh, okay. He didn't do anything like that to me. So I guess whatever, I mean, I'm in a different position than
everybody,
that other guy over there. So, so he can be ripped off and nobody's going to hear about it. Whereas he rips me off, I'll be like, oh, this is going in the letters page.
That's true.
Man, I aspire to make it in the letters page. Maybe I should write one, huh?
You need to write letters. That's really what it is.
Yeah, that's how you get in there, Jay.
These days in particular, there are so few people who are writing letters that if a comic has a letters page, it's almost guaranteed that you're going to get in there. They can't be too choosy.
Well, I'm
a little choosy on some of it, just because there are some people who would just will write in to be dicks, and it's like, I need to print this.
Well, I'll make sure my letter isn't me being a dick. I'll do that.
There was one guy who every time would write in, and his whole ploy was, I'm just going to summarize the comic and give no opinion at all. But here's what happened. I read the new issue of Savage Dragon. He was walking down the street, and then he ordered a sandwich, and then he got into a fist fight with Mako, and then it's like, well, yeah, I know that. I was there for all of it. Why would I print this letter? You said nothing. You didn't ask any questions. You didn't pose any opinion. You just told me what happened. I'm perfectly aware of what happened.
I kind of want to just do that for Ant. I'll just send you a letter but unless he's already got it covered, right?
So it's like, am I getting this right? Is this what happened? It's like, yes, you read it right.
Got it right on the nose there, buddy. Nice. Well, I don't want to not cover Shazam, or the fact that you didn't call the character Shazam, and I wanted to actually ask: was that on purpose for Captain Marvel? You brought up
no, he was Captain Marvel at the time, so
no. Is that something that do you always refer to the character as Captain Marvel, or do you separate? Do you distinct?
Because he's Captain Marvel. I refer to Captain Marvel as Captain Marvel because he's Captain Marvel.
He's not Shazam.
He's never not been Captain Marvel in any of the comics I've ever read with Captain Marvel in it. That's just the way it was. I mean, I've got I got probably 200 Captain Marvel comics of various sorts. I've got a bunch of copies of Wiz. I've got probably 130 issues of Captain Marvel Adventures. I've got some issues of the 1970s Shazam series, but in that he was called Captain Marvel. Yep. Even on the cover is one magic word: Shazam, the original Captain Marvel. So
no disagreement.
Yeah,
I was just
where he's called Shazam, or just like, what the hell are you even doing? That doesn't make sense. That's his magic word. What are you calling that for?
I think there was litigation. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, it's a mess. They can't own the name Captain Marvel because Marvel owns the name.
So just maybe that reason. But hey, I didn't. I guess I feel like I don't want to gloss over anything, but it is kind of, you mentioned your fire. I think it's kind of documented about the fire, and for me, it's heartbreaking and it's sad. But at the same time, I mean, you collected it twice, basically, right? Like you said you lost your collection and then you went out and you collected it again.
Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff I rebought. There's a bunch of stuff I didn't rebuy too. There's tons and tons of stuff that I'm like, when was the last time I looked at Ross Andrews' run on Amazing Spider-Man? I like him fine, but there was never a time I was like, oh, I really need to look at that issue again. So I got like the essential Spider-Mans and reprinted those. I didn't feel like I needed to go out and get the original comics. It's like, all right, that's fine. There's some comics that were so near and dear to me that were like, I must have the originals. So I bought a bunch of the run on the Incredible Hulk that Herb Trimpe drew, just because I'm such a Herb Trimpe fiend. And then, pretty much everything I could get my hands on that I could afford that Jack Kirby drew. I bought just tons and tons of, original art and comic books. So I got a bunch of that. And then some of that was stuff I never even owned. I didn't own any issues of Jack's run on Thor before the fire. And then because I never liked the inking by Vinnie Colletta. So it's like afterward, it's like, well, I bought everything else. I guess I'm getting this now. So.
And just a quick question on the collecting piece of it. Do you care about condition or just as long as you have a copy?
I generally want things to be intact. But I'm not buying things to resell them. So they're just comics that I want to own, and chances are that I will die with these comics and my kids will be like, what the hell is this? So they'll all end up in auction or whatever at some point. And that's fine.
The Larsen collection.
So I'm not super like, oh, I must have the best condition issues of whatever.
Yeah. Do you have, and you may have been, I don't know your answer to this. You may have been asked this before. What's your favorite Jack Kirby cover?
I don't have a favorite Jack Kirby cover. So, yeah, I mean, I own a handful of them. I've got a Devil Dinosaur cover that Walt Simonson inked. I've got a Jimmy Olsen cover that Neil Adams inked. And then I've got some Commandy covers because I bought a bunch of complete issues of Commandy, so I got a bunch of those. And then I've got the Eternals annual, so that's got a cover on it.
Yep.
So there's a bunch of little...
But there's not one specific one where you're
there's
like...
There's not one that I would be like, oh, if I could only have this one cover, then my life would be complete. Because there's so many that I like. And it's like, oh, all right, I definitely want that one.
Yeah, I know. I love a lot of Kirby in the 60s, of course, and his run on Captain America. I like the Kirby cover. I believe it's
all that stuff.
Yeah.
When he came back and there was that first, 193 cover where he's super, his fist is way bigger than his head and he's all stretched out looking. It's like, I would love that cover. That's one of my favorites. But if somebody else was like, or here's the cover to Cap Goes Wild from issue 10 something, I was like, that's a pretty good cover too. I like that also. So there's a bunch of indie stuff. It's really hard for me to narrow it down because I'm such a fan of all that stuff.
Well, and that's I guess that's kind of why I asked, because you are such a fan that I didn't know if a fan like you had a favorite. But it's good that you don't, right? It's kind of like pizza. What's your favorite kind of pizza? Any pizza, right? Like it's all good.
The problem with not having a favorite is you don't get to have that. This is the one thing I always wanted more than anything. And now that I've got it, I'm so satisfied. It's like, I want to have them all. I can't have them all. It's like, yeah, but really, that's what I want. Is every single one.
I just need them all. Well, you can need them all. You'll have them all. Do you have every Kirby cover, or are you missing a few?
I don't have every Kirby anything.
Oh, I bet you do. Yeah, I see you got boxes of them back there.
I got boxes of stuff, but I mean, that guy's career went back to the 1940s, and some of that stuff is super, super crazy expensive. And it's like, I don't have Captain America #1 from 1940.
Yeah, that's like two conventions
At least two
conventions
conventions. Yeah.
It's like that's like a house these days. The price of some of those things.
At least.
Like, yeah.
All right. Well, let's keep the ball rolling and move right into our final segment.
Speculation.
The speculation segment. That's right. This is the one where we talk about a collectible or a book that we're kind of keeping an eye on, or something that might be either undervalued or something that we just recommend people go out and take a look at, as it could increase in value over time. Jesus, do you want to kick this show off?
Yeah, I have a trifecta of books from Mr. Erik Larsen. Drawn by
excellent choice.
Drawn by Mr. Erik Larsen for no reason. There's no reason why I picked these. It's just I like these.
What an amazing coincidence.
So for me, I mean, I grew up on Venom. He was in, the cartoon. He was in the game. So Venom for me is a big deal. I have his first appearance. I have all that stuff. But I wanted to talk about these books right here. And these books are $15 to $20 books, and it's 3 of them. First with ASM 332, which is where you have been given credit as adding drool and a long tongue to Venom, which is making him the Venom we know now. That book is $15 to $20. I mean, it's an essential part of the character. He's been in multiple movies now. I can only see this book going up higher. And then the next 2 are covers, 346 and 347. ASM 346 and 347. 346 is iconic cover art, which the reflection of Spider-Man in the eyes of Venom, which I just think is awesome. I have a shirt of that cover, which is awesome. And then 347, which is the Shakespeare, the Hamlet homage, where he's talking to the skull of Spider-Man in a torn Spider-Man mask. So those books are also right around $20, $25. If you can get them under $30, I think you're doing a good job right now. And again, those are iconic covers. They're bound to go up as well. That's my speculation.
I love both of those books, and the Hamlet one is a personal favorite. I've got that in my closet. The closet is the special place. I have multiple long boxes elsewhere, but the ones I keep in my closet are the favorites, and that one's in there. So you made the closet, Erik.
All
right. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go next, Erik. If you don't mind, I'm going to cut in front of you here. I've got more Erik Larsen books. So I thought there was a theme, so I figured maybe I'd just go next since there was an Erik Larsen theme here. I'm going to talk about Savage Dragon a little bit. So I am a big Savage Dragon fan, have been. I've got kind of this funny story of like in the 90s Image and when all the books were coming out and just inundating everybody with all these indie comics, and everybody loved what was going on. I was a kid in a candy store, but in a comic store, literally. But the thing that Savage Dragon did for me, so at the time I was probably like 10 or 11, I maybe somewhere ballpark. And the thing I remember most about Savage Dragon was sex. I basically I attribute Savage Dragon as my first like introduction sort of thing into sex. Where
how old are you now?
I'm 37.
37. So when Image Comics started, you were 7 years old.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
Good man.
It's crazy to think about. It's like you barely existed.
Well, that's true. And maybe I still barely exist. I don't know. But it really was like, I remember Savage Dragon and I remember like breasts, and I remember like it just everything about the character was super macho, just, over masculine and the character, I can't remember which episode or which issue it was. I think it might've been, it was like number 4 maybe or something where he had just basically woke up with a woman and then she gets shot at the door. I believe. Yeah, sorry, spoiler alert for everybody that hasn't read it yet. But so I attributed a lot of my youth to, I just got into comic books, and the thing is, you could get the action, you could get the superheroes and stuff with Spider-Man, but Savage Dragon was kind of my jam, along with Spawn and some of that stuff. Those were my superheroes. Well,
a lot of those comics were confiscated by a lot of parents.
Yes. Well, actually, that did happen to me too, along with some CDs that I had that my parents didn't appreciate either. So, but they just take that stuff. I got some of it back. I don't know where the Savage Dragons went though. So if you want to go for the first appearance of Paul Dragon, aka Savage Dragon, you got to go all the way back to 1982 and get Graphic Fantasy #1. Although you might have a hard time finding a copy of this, as estimated only about 300 total were printed. Eric, can you give any were there only 300, or do you know how many were printed originally?
It was kind of a mess because we printed up some for a convention and didn't bind them too terribly well. We didn't trim them, so they're really ragged and ugly looking. And then we wanted 500 is the idea, and so we were able to, we printed it on a tabletop offset press. So some of them looked terrible, and then we ran out of some of the pages, and then we reprinted some of those. So there ended up being 2 small runs of it, some of which was all printed at the same time, and some of which wasn't. And then we trimmed later copies of it. So if you can find an untrimmed one that's all ragged looking, that's really the first run. But I haven't seen any of those in the wild, period. Since
it's impossible.
Since forever. So there's 500 kind of total. I lost a few copies when the house burned down, so that takes a few more out of circulation. And I lived up in the Washington State area at the time, so if you scour Washington State, you probably find a lot more copies than
I don't think you're finding this book at like the Goodwill or anything like that.
It's tough to find. I actually bought one at a convention some years back, and somebody was selling it for, they just were like, they didn't know how much to sell it for, so they just sold it 10 times cover price, which was like, that's $22.50. That was a bargain.
Holy cow!
That book's going for hundreds of dollars now.
That book's going for thousands of dollars now. Well, when it does sell, with the way the book has been, it's like sometimes sales aren't awesome and sometimes sales are way better. So if you're a new guy who's trying to assemble a run on Savage Dragon, it's really difficult. If you're just like, where's 106? Can I get a copy of it? It's like, good luck. I mean, find that at any price. I do think there's books to be had, but you're right. Like Savage Dragon itself, you're not going to just go on eBay and be able to just fill out your run and click buy it now on just a whole bunch of books.
No, every now and then somebody will just get so pissed off at me that they'll sell it all. It was just follow people on Twitter when they get really mad at me, then be like, all right, hey, do you have any packages? I would love to relieve you of your pain.
Actually, that's a really good idea.
That's a great idea. That's a great idea. Make some offhand comment about it and then wait for people to.
Oh my God, Erik Larsen is such a dick. It's like, oh, you're my guy.
Well, so if you are unable to locate or find a Graphic Fantasy #1, which who could blame you? There are literally a few hundred in the world total. Although if you can find it, pick that thing up, because that's one that I have on my short list of something I'd love to get my hands on at some point. But you can also go and find there's a few other keys that maybe you may want to look for. Savage Dragon #1, which is the first solo title, Savage Dragon, which published in 1992. Another one worth picking up, Savage Dragon 33, which is the first appearance and birth of Malcolm Dragon, who in issue 192 takes the mantle for Savage Dragon. And I would add that you may also want to look, if there's 33, definitely get that, but look for issue number 32, which has the first appearance of one of the best villains in the series, Heavy Flow. And I think that might be a good one to pick up as well. And then and then the last one I have is Savage Dragon 250, which came out in 2020, which Paul Dragon comes back from an alternate reality. And I think that was a fun storyline as well. So worth picking up. The reason I'm specking on these is, honestly, it's such a beloved character, and the character has been around for a long time. I mean, there's a lot of history there. You've been the writer and artist on it for quite, the whole run. So I'm curious. And there was previously there was a TV series.
Also, we reprinted last year Graphic Fantasy 1 and 2.
That's true.
So if you want to if you can't ever find the original, there is a facsimile where we're going to print it on the same kind of basically typewriting paper, which is what we printed the original on. It's like, we're going to duplicate this as close as we can to looking and feeling like the original comic that came out, in 1982. The only difference is the cover price is a bit steeper. And it says Image Comics instead of Ajax Comics Group.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I will say, I need to get myself one of those.
Too, it's like their original printing is so terrible.
Well, I got to pick myself up one of those as well, because I don't have it. And I wasn't aware that you actually printed on the same paper. That's
it's so close to looking like the original that whenever I see one sitting out, I kind of get like, oh shit, I need to put that in the back. It's like, no, it looks like the same thing. It's just somewhat better printed than the original. It's like, you can tell the original because all the color is out of register and it looks like absolute crap. But it's like, all right, let me get the color perfectly in register, and it's gonna look super good.
Well, I brought up Savage Dragon, and I put you as last on this list, sort of as a way to prompt you as well for something that I was curious about with regards to the character Savage Dragon. So we had a TV series in the 90s that ran for a couple of seasons that I was actually a fan of as well as a kid. But with
it's viewable on the Peacock network if one is so inclined. Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know it was on Peacock Art.
Yeah, you can go watch it there. I think if you don't have Peacock or whatever, I think it's viewable with ads, and it's like, so you can sit there and go, "Wow, this is not what I remembered."
It has,
I was a little kid and easily impressed.
I was revisiting some older animated series, and they don't all hold up as well as I remember as a kid. That is a true story. But maybe that's a part of it. Well, I will. Savage Dragon itself has held up, although for some reason when I was a kid, I thought there was nudity in it, and there's not actually nudity.
No,
but I probably
not until way later.
Yeah,
more recently, it's kind of all right. Let's
see what we can do.
Let's do this a little bit. See how this works out. Oh, people are losing their minds. Okay, I guess I won't do that.
So, with the recent success of Invincible, right, which took on a little bit more of a mature rating, very bloody, very violent, could you see that happening with Savage Dragon?
I could see it. I kind of, with all this stuff, I kind of am looking for somebody who I would trust to kind of just pick up that ball and run with it and let me be kind of the guy who says, his eyes are green, not blue. and that, and just be like, I don't want to be super hands-on with it. And that's, and I really want somebody I can trust who can be like, no, you do an excellent job and I'll let you do your excellent job. But those things, hunting those down and finding the right people and casting and going to those sales meetings and making those pitches is like, that is such a chore.
And you haven't been approached yet about that?
I haven't been approached by somebody who can really make it happen.
I see.
Every now and then I am approached by somebody who's like, I want to go out and sell this thing, and I want to be this, and I want to be an executive producer on this, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, all right. But if you're not going to make this happen, you're wasting everybody's time. And
yeah,
that's no fun for anybody.
No, and it would take a lot of time, right? There's a lot of
it's so much time and so much effort to get stuff actually made, and it's way more time and effort to get it made well. And you really need a lot of people on your side who have similar vision that you do and really want to do a good job with it. And when it comes down to it, it's like you could do that, or you could do more issues of your comic book. It's like, well, I just rather do my comic, really. I got in here to do comics, so if I can do more of those, that would be excellent. So mostly I've just been doing my own comic because it's just me following the path of least resistance. But people have knocked on my door. Oh, we want to do Ant. We could see Ant. It would be great. Just get whatever.
Well, I love that you're still producing your comic, but I do want to say I'd love to see Savage Dragon.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to see it. I'd like to see a Savage Dragon cartoon. I'd like to see a Savage Dragon live action movie. All that stuff. It's like, oh yeah, let's get somebody awesome to do this and run with it and do a great job with it. That would be excellent. Do I anticipate that person showing up tomorrow and making me an offer I can't refuse? God, that would be awesome. But until there's that knock on the door, I'm going to be creating comics. And it's not a dream that I want to chase, just because it takes so long and it can be so fruitless. Yeah. You can just be like, I'm traveling down to LA all the time and I'm taking meetings and I'm showing up and I'm doing all these drawings to illustrate what I'm talking about and giving out big piles of comic books to everybody and giving them toys and all this stuff. And then nothing happens. It's like, well, then you just pissed away months of your life and you don't have anything to show for it. It's like, well, that's no fun.
That's an interesting perspective I hadn't really thought about on that. Because, of course, me as the viewer, selfishly, am just saying.
Yeah. As the viewer, as the audience, you're like, so people are making superhero movies now. How come you don't make Savage Dragon? It's like, well, we're Warner Brothers and we own all the DC characters. Why would we make a movie of that? We've got all this other stuff. It's like, all right, what about you, Disney? Well, funny you should ask. So then it's like, what about you, Sony? It's like, well, we got Spider-Man and everything related to Spider-Man, so we're going to kind of run that into the ground. So which they are like, all right, well, who's left? Who's hungry to do this stuff? Who's got the money to do this stuff? And who's got the vision to go, hey, this guy owns Super Patriot, who's super cool, Savage Dragon, who's awesome, and Ant, I can do all kinds of crazy shit with her. He's got a whole universe in and of himself. I could be doing the Marvel Cinematic Universe and only have to deal with one human being. This would be great.
The Larsen universe.
Finding somebody who's that guy who's going to be like, yes, this is my vision. Yeah, that's a tough call. That's a tough call.
But I mean, that is interesting the way you put it too, because I mean, you're right. Like they have, footholds in certain, Warner Brothers and Disney and stuff, but you do have that. You have that huge run, huge characters, one person, and then you have the built-in fan base already. That's my thing too. Like, just like, again, as a viewer, like, it'd be so dope to see it, now compared to the 90s. How I was in the 90s, but everything has it.
There's a whole different parameters and stuff. Nowadays you can just go, hey, this is for mature readers. It's like, here you go. Wow, it's nothing but vaginas in this thing.
The vagina issue.
Wow, there's a whole different kind of universe, and I was expecting that. Cool beans.
That went a different direction than I thought. Okay, well, Erik, we've kept you quite a while here, maybe a little bit longer than we promised you, but it really has been a lot of fun. That kind of really wraps up what our segments are. But I wanted to ask real quick: was there anything that you have coming out that we didn't cover yet? Because I wanted to make sure. I know we've got Ant coming.
No, I'm doing the same stuff I've been doing forever. So I'm doing Ant. I'm doing Savage Dragon. I recently had there's a bunch of Savage Dragon fans who do a podcast called the Savage Fincast.
Yep.
And those guys were coming on 10 years of doing this podcast, and they're like, oh, it'll be an awesome way to celebrate this. Let's do a comic book. And so they all came up with their crazy ass Savage Dragon related comic book. And then just a bunch of different people, and they kind of networked out. And then they're like asking me permission. So can we publish this thing? We just want to have it be for the club itself. And then they sent it to me. I'm like, holy crap, this comic is awesome. Can I publish this? They're like, hell yeah, you can. So
that's really
we're putting
cool.
out this one shot that's just called Super Freaks, and it's by these Savage Dragon readers, and it's so insane that I'm like, I must share this with the world. So
when is that coming?
That is out. I don't know if it's May or June. I want to say it's May, but yeah, if you can get it's just such a work of pure insanity. It's like one of those things where you will run across somebody doing some like Tijuana Bible or some crazy bootleg Captain Marvel comic or something, where it's just some fan who's just completely off their gourd, and I decide I'm going to do my own Batman story. It's like, whoa, that's madness. It's that kind of just, it's just crazy cool. It's like, I'm all about this. So let's print this thing. I don't know how well it'll do.
Well, you've got my money. Holy cow.
Yeah.
It's such a weird thing. And it's like I had done the cover is like some commission that I had drawn for somebody. And so one of those guys inked it, and then it was well colored. And so it's really strangely pieced together, where it's like, this is kind of legit and this is kind of legit. And then some of the guys who are contributing art have done backups in Savage Dragon at various times. So there's a number of guys in there who are like, oh, this guy did this backup, this guy did that. So there's stuff there that you'll recognize. Some of the lettering for some of it is done by, real letterers and the whole 9 yards. Wow. So
all right.
It's just a super cool one-off oddity that came into existence kind of behind my back that I was doing. I'm just like, oh, okay, you want to do something crazy and cool, I will publish that. That is awesome.
That's pretty awesome.
But beyond Super Freaks, it's Savage Dragon and just trying to keep my head above water on both of those.
Nice. Well, you've got a couple of readers here that we love reading your stuff. So thank you very much. And thanks for joining us on this episode. As I expected, this was a lot of fun, and it was really awesome to chat with you.
Yes. Thank you.
All right,
Appreciate
guys.
it. Thank you, Erik.
Well, thanks for having me.
And now I got to do my radio outro here. And thanks to all you out there listening. If you want to reach out to us, you can find us on Twitter at SpecTalesPod and on Instagram at SpecTalesPodcast. Thanks, everybody. We'll catch you all next week when we play another round of Pin the Tail on the Grail. Have a good week.